Hello, so today we're going to be making some MSU-1 audio files. I did a previous video on this, but I really just kind of touched on the general idea of track looping and didn't really go into the process of then taking those looped tracks and making them into MSU-1 tracks. The process there is pretty simple, but I just kind of left that out, and since then I've actually written a whole new tool for doing that, and so I kind of want to show that off as well. So today I'm going to try and go through the entire process from start to finish, and we'll see how this goes. So first off, there's a couple of things you want to have. The first is Audacity. It's a great free music editor. And it's pretty simple to use, and it does everything we need for this. Next off, what I use I find it useful to be able to listen to the original audio tracks in order to determine where I want to loop my tracks, because sometimes the remade tracks will have extra musical parts in them that are not in the original tracks, and I want to listen to the original to know which parts I want to keep and which parts I don't. Probably the easiest to use that I've found is to download Winamp, and then there's a plugin pack for Winamp called ChipAmp, and let me see if I can pull that up here real quick. So right here, chipamp.org is where you can get that, and you just right here they've got the links to get Winamp, a link to download ChipAmp. You install them both, and then you can get your SPC files a lot of places. Probably my favorite is snesmusic.org, I want to say. Let me see here. Yeah, snesmusic.org/v2. And they've got a full catalog of just about every game you could want. So then there's that, and then another tool that I've built is a plugin for foobar 2000, and I've got that right here. It's a foo input MSU. You can actually grab it from the release section and just download the DLL, and that goes into the components folder in foobar, and I'll show that off here towards the end. And then finally, here's the new tool, MSU-PCM++, and basically this takes all of the functionality from my old tool, which was a batch script and a handful of separate executables, and it actually puts it all into one executable. And you can download that here from the releases section. Just grab the exe, and that should be everything you need. Go ahead and close that, and so now we can get started. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to use a pack that I'm in the middle of working on right now. It's the Mega Man X Maverick Rising album from Overclocked Remix. So let me see where I'm at in that right now. I think I'm in disc 3. So we're going to do is it? Okay, we're going to do Spark Mandrill. So this particular album has a lot of tracks from all of the different Mega Man X games, or a lot of them, I'm not sure, but it doesn't have all of the tracks from any of the games. So I'm probably going to release this kind of as a like a supplemental pack. Like I'll just upload the files when I'm done with them, and it won't be enough to create a full pack, but PCM audio files can be mixed and matched arbitrarily. You can just, all you have to do is copy in a new file over the top of the old one, and that's all you got to do. They're all compatible with each other. So I'll just put these up for people who want these tracks as options in addition to, you'll have to get some of the other tracks elsewhere. But anyway, so we're going to go ahead and open our file. Windows is being really slow with its context menu lately. I'm not sure what's up with that. But eventually, here we go. So we're going to open with Audacity. And this is a track that I have not done yet. So I'm just going to go through the whole process from start to finish. So first off, unlike my previous tool, you do not need to change the project rate. This one already happens to be in 44.1 kilohertz, but if you have a 48 kilohertz or a 32 or whatever, you don't want to change that rate. You want to keep it in the original. So first things first, just kind of what are we looking for in a good loop point? Some people will take a track like this and they will try and keep as much of the track as possible and basically just be like, okay, I want to loop from like here to here, and then try and find a point that that allows them to do that. I don't like to do that because a lot of times, like I mentioned briefly earlier, these songs that are remixes of these original tracks, they will have additional parts to them where they actually add in like bridges and extra riffs that don't exist in the original track, and that sounds really good for a track that you're just going to listen to as music. However, we aren't going to just be listening to this as music. We want a... Oh, go away. Let me close this real quick. Close a few things. I'm rebuilding my file server, and some stuff is some stuff isn't currently working. Anyway, so if you listen to the original tracks, usually I find the loops are about 45 seconds to a minute long, and then it goes back and plays the exact same thing. And so that's usually kind of what I shoot for, is about a minute. And sometimes I do longer, because sometimes I can find a longer section that that doesn't include any additional riffs and stuff, and sometimes that sounds cool. But I don't want to include those additional riffs if I can avoid it. So the first thing I'll do is I will, well, okay, like, let's see here. Really, the first thing I tend to do is I actually go and listen to the original track. So let's see if I've got it here. No. Here we go. That's going to take a minute to open up. Okay. So an RSN file is actually a .rar file that contains a whole bunch of SPC tracks. So it has the entire soundtrack here. So we're looking for Spark Mandrill. And here it says it's a minute 47, but SPC files include the loops in them. So we're just going to go ahead and listen. And right there we have it. So there's our loop. So we've got about 50 seconds worth of music there. And so there's basically three sections within that song. And so I'm going to go ahead and listen to what we've got here. So this right here is actually a separate track. This is, or in the game it's a separate track. This is the stage start track, I believe. And here's where the actual Spark Mandrill stage starts. So here's our first section. here's our second section. I guess you could really just call this still the second section. I said there were 3, but really this is kind of... Okay, and right here... Okay, and see, this is what I was talking about with a riff that doesn't exist in the original song. So this isn't a section that I want. Really, we want to loop to here. And we want to loop back to here. So, real quick, just some navigation stuff in Audacity. To zoom in and out, you hold the Control key and you scroll with your with the mouse scroll wheel, and then if you hold Shift and scroll, it scrolls left and right. You can do it with the view. You can do it with the plus and minus here. I like to do it with the mouse. And then to select, you can either just grab and drag, or you can click and hold Shift and click here. Then to fine adjust, you hold Shift again and you go until you see the finger pointing to one direction or the other, and then you can grab it with the mouse and drag it like that. And if you're zoomed, like let's say we're zoomed out right here. So you want to make sure of which way the cursor's pointing, otherwise you might accidentally grab the wrong side. So anyway, now that we, from a wide view, kind of have an idea of where we want to grab, the next thing we want to care about is, in order to make a loop point seamless, you have to understand that you are actually going to be joining a waveform from the end. So in here, you've got these waves that are going up and down, up and down, up and down. And at some point, like let's just pick even though we're going to go here, let's pick something like here just to kind of get the point across. You see how the wave is going up. Well, when you loop back, you want to make sure that the point where you're looping back to is also going up. Otherwise, you'd want to be like here. Otherwise, if we were to loop back to here, then immediately before the loop, it's going up, and then it just jumps to right here and starts going down. And what you'll hear at that point, if you do something like that, is you'll actually hear a pop. And that's basically because you can think of these waveforms as the way that they're actually going to be physically translated into sound is that your speaker cone is moving forward and backwards. And so you can think of, moving up as the cone moving forwards and down as the cone moving backwards. And if you instantaneously change direction by, it's going up and then you send it back the wrong direction, it's trying to instantaneously change that that movement, which doesn't exactly work right, and you hear a pop. Or the other thing is, if your loop point was from here up to the top, you're telling your speaker cone to instantaneously jump from all the way back to all the way front, or all the way forward. And again, that's not really physically possible, and you get a click or a pop. So I showed this in my previous video, but I'm going to go ahead and show it again. So you have what we're looking for is what's called a zero crossing. We want our loop point to occur where the wave point is actually crossing this middle line. And there's a couple of different ways that it can do that. It can either cross in a positive direction, call this a positive edge. It can cross with a negative slope, which is a negative edge. Or it can do one of these where it's not actually crossing the line, but it's just touching the line. And what we want is so if our loop point comes right here, this is the end of the song and this is the beginning of the loop. We want there to be a continuous direction, and we want it to match on both sides. And we want to kind of do that at two levels. So if we zoom out a bit here, so we're kind of at a medium zoom level right here, and you can see these big major waveforms showing up. And on the major waveform, you see there's a positive edge. However, if we zoom in even further, if we were to choose, say, this point right here, this is actually a negative edge crossing. Even though the overall waveform is positive, we want both of these things to match. So if we were to pick this point, we would want the positive edge of the major waveform and an actual negative edge crossing. And we would want to go back here and we want to match both of those things. So here we've got it on the negative edge of the major waveform, which we don't want. So we're going to come back to here, and we're going to look for the negative edge of the crossing right there. So that's just to kind of illustrate this. This isn't actually the point that I want, because it would actually be better for us to go back to this quieter section immediately before then and use this. So you can see right here we've got a couple of samples here where it's actually sitting kind of flat on there. And if the waveform is really flat like this, you can actually get away with it not matching quite properly. Well, there's also some other times when you can get away with not matching quite properly. Let's see here. I don't have the photo up anymore, but here, I'll pull it up actually. So one of those times you can mismatch is, let's say you have a positive edge coming here, and then you go back to your loop point and you don't have a good positive edge, but you do have one of these. Well, if you were to match up the positive edge with this positive facing parabola, you can imagine what would happen if the line came up like this, kind of evened out, and then continued up. You'd get kind of a little bit of an S shape, but it would still be basically a positive edge. You could also do it with, if you had one of these negative parabolas matched up to a positive parabola, you'd get, a bit of a slope, a bit of a flat, and then it would continue up. So you can connect some mismatched waveforms. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it is something you want to kind of try for as much as possible, because it'll make it sound better. So anyway, back to here. So I'm picking this spot that's kind of quiet before the musical transition, because this is kind of our drum fill, and then this is where it goes off into the other riff. Quiet sections are usually a good place to try and do a loop point, because then there's not as much sound going on for you to actually notice that there's a change. If you can't find a quiet spot, then there's other considerations, like whether or not the same instruments are playing before and after the loop point. Because if you have a whole bunch of instruments playing towards the end of the song, and then you jump back to an earlier point where those instruments aren't playing anymore, you're going to hear that all of a sudden those instruments cut out very quickly. And you don't want that. You want a seamless loop point where you don't even know that the song has looped. So that's where these quiet sections are often quite useful for that. So actually I'm going to go back before that. I'm going to come back to here. And here we've got a good flat 0. And I don't know what this is going to sound like, because like I said, this is my first time messing around with this song. So to play a song in Audacity with a loop, you want to hold the Shift key and look up here where the play becomes a loop. And then you can either hit spacebar to start playing and it'll start playback here, or if you don't want to listen to the entire song and you just want to start it, say, up here just so you can hear just the loop, you can, while holding Shift, you just come and click somewhere up here in the timeline and it'll start playing there. So I am going to go ahead and do that. Oh, nope. So that's not the right place to loop. That's where I want to start the song though. But that is a bit of an intro. So now that I've found that, give me a second, and I'm gonna write that down. So what I'm looking at right now is so down here, you want to make sure that these are set to samples, because that's the number that we need, is we need the samples. So the song is going to start at sample number 499, 352, and I think the end of the loop, I'm going to write down 2160839. Okay, so that's not where I want to loop back to, that's just where I want to start. So let's play the song and try and figure out where we actually want to loop to. So it's going to be around here somewhere. I think it's this waveform, but I'm going to look a little bit closer this time. I think it's actually here. Yeah. So this is the first note that we want to hear in our loop. So now we're going to come here and we're going to try and find ourselves a good zero crossing. And what I see right now is I see this one. Okay, so that sounds good. I don't hear any popping. However, I don't think it quite matches up with this endpoint. So let's go here. Okay, so what do we have? So we have this waveform is it's a positive edge on kind of the major, and it's a positive edge here in the zoomed in. So let's try and find that here. So that's going to be like this right here. Just going to be like that. And yeah, that'll do it. So I've got I can go here or here. Neither one of them, you can look and you can see both the top and bottom aren't crossing the 0 point at the same time, and that's okay because they're very close. However, because it is a positive edge, I'm actually going to come back here by 1 because it's moving up in this positive direction. So that means when we come back here, I believe that this is slightly above, but nope, those are, yeah, so this one's directly on and that one's slightly above. So that's the right direction for it to go. So now let's listen to what that sounds like. No, that's not it. I think, actually, come to think of it. Okay, so, yeah, we don't need the drum part at all. It's actually, so, just to illustrate what I'm hearing, this right here is the same as that. So really, we could loop from there to there. However, I don't want to loop that intro. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to loop, I think it's here to like here. So let's see. Yeah, so that's that first. Okay, let's find that point again. It's right there, I think. Yeah. And I think it's going to be this. So again, we're looking for positive edge and a positive edge. So that's going to be like something like this, or we could use something like that. I'm going to go with this one, I think. Yeah. So let's try that. That's it right there. So now, listen one more time. Yeah. So sometimes I like to, I listen to it a couple of times, and sometimes I will actually go and start playing it, and I'll close my eyes and try and listen to it without watching to see whether or not I can actually hear when the loop occurs. And that time I listened to it and I couldn't hear when the loop occurred. So I'm happy with that loop. So I'm going to take down these numbers. 549188, 1918520. Oh, that's actually something I really need to. Okay, so you need to make sure that this is actually set to end, not length, because otherwise that will not give you the correct end sample, and it didn't. So this number is actually 2467715. Okay, so now that we have our numbers for this, you'll notice we only took a really small chunk out of the entire song. That's okay, because it's going to give us, we got the entire part of the song that we actually need, and it's going to loop seamlessly, and it's not going to sound like the song is going somewhere, which is, it's kind of hard to explain, but sometimes when you're writing a remix that's supposed to sound like a song and not like an endless loop, you're trying to make it go somewhere. You know, it's like it starts slow and then it builds and it builds and it builds, and then it drops off at the end. Or there's a lot of different things you can do with it, but a lot of times a song is meant to be listened to from start to finish, and it feels like it's going somewhere, and you don't want to feel like you got there and now you're starting over. With a loop point like this, it doesn't ever feel like you are going anywhere. It doesn't ever feel like you got there. It just keeps going and going and going and going. I don't know if that's a good explanation of it. I'll move on. So the important thing is we need 3 numbers. We need the very start of the song, we need our loop point, and we need our end point. So I have those 3 numbers that I wrote down. And now we're going to go ahead and make a config file. So here we go. So the type of file we're going to create is, it's actually a JSON file. You can name it whatever you want, but for the tool, the default file name that it looks for is tracks.json. So that's what we're going to call it. So I'm going to get started here. Now I actually took the time to make a JSON schema file for this file format. So we're going to go ahead and put that in here. And the cool thing about having a schema is that it actually will, because the reason I'm using Visual Studio Code, which might seem like a rather heavy-duty choice for just editing just a text file, because I have this schema file, it gives me things like IntelliSense and autocomplete. So we can, there we go. So it actually, see, it'll pop up all of the options that we want. So we're going to start here with game, and it'll tell us what the game is, so just by hovering over it. So game is the SNES game that this audio pack is intended for. So that is going to be Mega Man X. Okay. And now, so these first couple fields are actually optional. I just like to put them in there for documentation, and because then when you run the tool, it actually tells you these things. So the name of this audio pack, that is like the album that it came from. In this case, it's Mega Man X if I can spell, rising. And then we're going to go ahead and put in the artist is overclocked remix. I think that's how they do the capitalization for overclocked remix. I don't remember. And then, come on, I'm going to do URL. And again, this is optional stuff, but this tells you where I got the original audio from. And now we're going to get into stuff that actually matters. So normalization. Normalization is basically the volume level. And usually the normalization will be the same value for all of the tracks in an entire game. It'll differ from one game to the next, but for the most part it tends to be the same level for the entire game. So that's why it's available here as a global option, so you can just specify it once. You can, however, specify it at a track-by-track level. Super Metroid is the one game so far that I've found that really tends to have a lot of variation from track to track. So if you need that, you can. But here we're specifying global options. The global options become the defaults for anything that is not specified at a track-by-track level, but anything that's specified in a track overrides the defaults. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and our output prefix is going to be MMX MSU. So that's basically the file name that's going to be used. And now that pretty much does it for our global options, and we're going to go ahead and set up our tracks. So the first thing we need here, you can see here's all of our options for a track. So we're going to start with the track number. And this can be hard to find what each track number corresponds to. I've already done a Mega Man X track, so I already know which in-game track corresponds to what MSU track number. But that can take some trial and error. Or if there's already a track pack available for the particular game, you can listen to the existing track pack to figure that out. However, since I already know this, let me see here, that was what? That was Spark Mandrill. Spark Mandrill is track 8. Okay, so next we are going to specify our file. Now the file is relative to the application directory. So we're going to go here, and our application, our executables right here, and so is our JSON file. So we need to specify the directory. And backslashes need to be escaped, so you actually have to type a double backslash for a directory. And then it is right here, 305. So there's our file. And now, this was a pretty simple track. It didn't require a crossfade. It's not going to require subtracks and subchannels. I don't have to do padding or any of this stuff. I'll probably have to do a separate video to actually go through some of these options and how they work and how they interact, because you can do some pretty complicated stuff with this. But so we are going to go ahead, and all we need is a trim start, because we're not starting at the beginning of the file. We're going to start here. If we were going to start at the beginning of the file, we could skip that, and that would be optional. However, we do need it, so let me pull up that number. So here's where we're going to start. Here's where we're going to end. And here is where we're going to loop. So that's really all there is to it for a simple track. We didn't have to go in and we didn't actually have to edit this file. We didn't have to cut out the section we needed. We didn't have to change the volume level. We didn't have to do anything. All we did was we came in here to find where our numbers were. Now, with that, we can go ahead and we can come up here. And you can see here this mmx.json, like I said, I'm in the middle of actually working on this entire pack. I just wanted to start a brand new file to show the whole thing. But I will go ahead and show that file here in a second. But, so if we just double click on this, it will look for a tracks.json file. And if there's no tracks.json file, it won't run. However, if we have a file that's named something different, you can drag and drop it onto the executable and it'll work. So we'll go here. Okay. Oh, just remembered. Another one that I like to do is I like to include a title, which is here really quick. I'm just gonna, so just to show you, this is the output that you would see. So it shows you, basically just this this metadata that you typed in. It just shows it up here, and then it shows you the track number and the title that you give it, and it'll show you that for all of your files. So now what we have is we have this file here that is named based on our output prefix and then the track number, because that's the way that MSU tracks are named. It's either Huygen uses the prefix track, so you need to set this to just the word track, and then you would get track-8. The SD to SNES and SNES 9X and BSNES, or the BSNES forks that have MSU-1 support, they use the same name as the actual ROM file. So that's why I have this set. So if you want to export it for Huygen, you want to set your track prefix to just the word track. However, now we've got it, and so here I'm going to show you, this is with the foobar plugin. You don't have to go through the opening process with Audacity and raw importing and typing in all the values like you had to do before. You can just double click and it plays. And it supports the looping, so I'm just going to go ahead and let it play through, and then you're going to hear when it gets to the end, it'll go ahead and loop. And there you have it. So you can see the seek bar just kind of sits here at the end. It doesn't like jump back to the loop point. I'm not really sure how to do that with the plugin, but I've seen other foobar plugins that work exactly the same way, and it'll just keep playing, keep looping. So there's no real problem. It works, and you can still seek, just fine. So you can hear we've got a good loop there, and that's really all there is to it. The only thing left to show is that, let's see here. So I'm going to go ahead and open up project file here. And you can see, so this is what I've got. This is all of the other tracks I've done so far. I'm going to go ahead and copy this in there. Track 8. I'll go here. So that's most of what there is to it. There's a lot of other options that you can use here in the tool. You can do crossfades. You just all you do is specify how long of a fade you want. You can do a fade in, you can do a fade out. You can add padding to the start or the end of the file. And then there's actually a lot of really cool ways that you can mix multiple files together. Or you can, if you want to like split a section out of a song, you can cut a track into multiple pieces and then put them all back together again. Like I said, it'll probably take a whole separate video to kind of go through some of those more advanced options. Another thing right here is I've got this options array where, so for track number 2, it's Sting Chameleon, and in this Maverick Rising pack, they actually have 2 different versions of the Sting Chameleon stage. Disc 1 track 4 and disc 2 track 3. So I created a track with just the options that are the same, and then basically this use option says use option 1. That means treat this track as if this was all the options that I wanted. So use this file, use this trim in, use this loop. If I put track 2 here, it would ignore all of this, and instead it would use all of these. It would use this file, use this trim, it would loop here, and it would add a crossfade. So that allows me to actually have both versions of the output stored here in this file, even though I only am going to output one of them. Then I don't have to like create a second file for it, or if I'm playing around with different sections of the song and I want to hear what if I make it longer before I loop, or what if I loop at this different point, you can use it kind of as a scratch pad. You can create a new option and work there without losing your previous version that worked. And yeah, so really quick, now that I've got that, I'll go ahead and show you. So you can also do, let's see, msupcm. So if you just specify your JSON file like this, it's exactly the same as if you dragged and dropped it onto the exe. It would do exactly the same thing. I'm just typing it in manually because it keeps the window open. And then you can see, and then here it'll just go through all your tracks, and it outputs them as it's working. And you can see there's a bunch of tracks missing. I'm not done yet, and like I said, this album doesn't actually have all of the tracks, but then it's just all done. Here's your outputs, and we can listen to them if you want. And then you can just, skip to the end if all you care about is listening to the loop. You can hear where that was just a nice, clean, seamless loop there. So that's what we're shooting for, is we want a seamless loop that you can't even tell where it happens. So this one was a little bit harder. I actually had to do some tricky crossfading. But, yeah, I think I pulled it off. And here's the one that we just did. So this one I don't think actually does loop. This is just the intro. Let's see here. Oh, I hate that that song. There we go. And so that, see, this is kind of what I was talking about, where the song doesn't ever go anywhere. It's just doing the exact same thing over and over and over again. This is a pretty short example, but you know, for some of these longer songs like this. I'll just listen to this one all the way through, because I kind of like it. So this one I left in a little bit of a riff, you can hear, because really the original song was just the 4 bars of just, yeah, it was a really, well, maybe it was more than 4 bars, but so you can hear that I left in this guitar riff, but it's just the one riff that's going to keep going over and over again. So that's kind of what I try to shoot for. It's a matter of taste. Some people like to try and include the whole song, and that's okay. I don't think it fits as well within the game context, but yeah, that should be about everything. We'll see if I get around to making another video to explain some of the more advanced stuff. For now, one of the more helpful things is to try and use an editor that is aware of how to parse a JSON schema so that it can give you that feedback. I have been really happy with Visual Studio Code. I know there's probably some other editors that are also capable of that. I don't think Notepad++ does, but maybe there's a plugin that'll do it. Or you know, you can always just run it through a separate JSON linter. But I like to have that real-time feedback because here, I'll show you if I let me pull this up real quick. So here, like let's say I tried to put something like put a string in here. Oops. So it'll actually tell me incorrect type, expected a number. Now what it won't do is if I put in a so if you put in something completely invalid like that, it won't tell you that it's invalid, but the program itself will just ignore it. If it's an unknown key, it just gets ignored. So you can put whatever you want in. You can use that for comments or whatever, because JSON doesn't actually support comments. Sometimes if I want to do the equivalent of commenting out a line, what I'll do is I'll go here and I'll just put a hash tag in the key name, and now this is no longer a valid title because it doesn't just say title anymore. So sometimes I'll do that as a way of commenting out a line if I'm not liking it, or if I want to try something else for a minute. But the schema, by putting this line up here, or I'm trying to think, you can go into your settings and create a workspace setting. I don't actually have a workspace set up right now, but if you have a workspace set up, you can go ahead and you can use, let's see here, where is it? You can use the JSON schemas, and you can paste this into there. Oh, it's not there now, but so you can do that, and it'll actually set it at the workspace level rather than putting it in the file itself. But it's a lot easier to just put it in the file. I think that pretty well covers it. So if there's any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments section, or you can email me. Yeah, I'm happy to help, and hopefully that does help. So thanks for watching.